Taiwan is gearing up for a referendum on Saturday where trade, nuclear energy, and the environment are at stake.
And Staś Butler speaks with pro- and anti-nuclear energy activists about if Taiwan should operate its fourth nuclear power plant.
And Emma examines an exhibit about the female criminal mind.
And finally, in Hashtag Taiwan, Leslie Liao tells you how maps have stirred up trouble for Taiwan. This is Taiwan Insider. Taiwan is getting ready for a referendum this Saturday. Let's take a look at the issues.
This Saturday, Taiwan goes to the polls. Voters will be asked 4 questions. 1. Should Taiwan reinstate a ban on imported pork containing the additive ractopamine? 2. What should be the fate of Taiwan's 4th nuclear power plant? 3. Should a natural gas facility in Taoyuan be moved to save a nearby algae reef? And 4. Should future referendums happen on the same day as elections? Over 19.8 million citizens are eligible to cast their ballots. These include Taiwan's youngest voters, those born before August 28, 2003. All 4 questions on the ballot are hotly contested, and so it seems that turnout will be high. All voters will have their temperature checked, and those with fevers will be taken to vote in booths specially set aside for voters who are feeling unwell.
Now, in this referendum, President Tsai Ing-wen wants everyone to vote no on all the questions, while the opposition KMT wants people to vote yes. One question is about importing pork with the additive ractopamine. Taiwan's lawmakers have been so passionate about this issue that they made world news when they threw pig guts in the legislature before the ban was lifted last year. The KMT wants to renew the ban due to fears of the effects of ractopamine on pork. But President Tsai Ing-wen says that allowing the imports could pave the way for a bilateral trade agreement with the U.S. and Taiwan joining the Regional Trade Partnership, the CPTPP. Another question pits 2 environmental concerns against each other: algal reefs and energy plans. Environmentalists want to relocate a planned liquefied natural gas terminal to protect the precious Datan algal reef that's a unique habitat for marine creatures. President Tsai says they'll move the terminal farther from shore to protect the reef, and the new LNG terminal will help the nation meet its new energy goals. In terms of its energy mix, by 2025, Taiwan wants to increase natural gas from 36 to 50%, reduce coal to 30%, increase renewable energy to 20%, and phase out nuclear energy and oil-fired plants. That's a wrap-up on those 2 questions. Next up, Leslie Liao on the issue of referendums themselves.
Another question voters will be asked is if referendums should be held alongside general elections. We did this in 2018 and it was not pretty. People had to answer 10 questions in addition to voting for local leaders. Voters were stuck in line for hours and precincts began counting votes before everyone got a chance to vote. Some say that affected the outcome of the voting. Since then, the government has split referendums and general elections. But the KMT wants to hold them together, saying it would be more cost-effective and achieve a higher voter turnout. Now, there's one last important question, and that one's about nuclear energy. The question is, should Taiwan push forward and finish building its 4th nuclear power plant in Longmen? Stash spoke to Professor Li Ming at Tsinghua University to find out why he thinks Taiwan needs to build the Longmen facility.
I think Longmen nuclear power plant is very, very important for the power supply for the next maybe 40 years, 60 years, or even 80 years. I'm pretty sure we will run into so-called rolling blackout starting next year, maybe up to 5 years later, 5 or 6 years later. For the next 5 or 6 years, the installed capacity of patchable power is not changed at all. So if we abandon nuclear, I don't think we can survive.
Looking at, I suppose, at some of the fears that the anti-nuclear movement have about nuclear power in Taiwan. I mean, their movement has grown stronger since the Fukushima Daiichi meltdown in Japan in 2011, and they worry that Taiwan would be susceptible to that kind of a meltdown if there were a serious earthquake in Taiwan. I mean, how valid are those concerns?
Well, as long as you can through the proper design of nuclear power plant, you can keep the plant safe even under the earthquake. For example, in the United States, there's a very famous nuclear power plant building very close to an active fault. That's the Diablo Canyon in California. That plant has been operated for almost 40 years now. Based on the evidence we have now, you really cannot say that we have a active fault underneath the plant site. So for the public referendum, we are not saying that the power plant is going to operate. We are asking government to initiate the process of getting operating license for the power plant.
How big are the risks from that kind of contamination from nuclear waste, and is the government doing enough to minimize those risks?
If you talk about risk of nuclear waste to the people for the next several hundred years, the risk is zero. Okay, I say that very clearly, is zero. For the fourth nuclear power plant, the design for the 40 years or even 60 years of operation, there's no waste going out from the plant site. Everything is inside the plant. Then what we can do about the waste from the first, second, and the third nuclear power plant, then we can do the same thing for those waste. Now, for someone, if you do not have a repository site, that means the issue is not solved. But for me, no. The repository site is a political issue. It's not a technical issue. So I think the nuclear waste is not a real problem at all in this public referendum.
But while Professor Li is convinced Taiwan needs the Longmen nuclear plant, others disagree. Environmental researcher Wei Yang tells Stash why he thinks the plant is a waste of time and money.
We really don't want to see the possibility and the risk of a nuclear accident take place in Taiwan, because in that way, basically the people living in the northern part of Taiwan will have nowhere to hide. And secondly, because the Longmen nuclear power plant is a power plant that started construction in 1999, and after 15 years of construction, it has not yet finished and has not yet passed the required process and test. And thirdly, there are some risk concerning earthquake, because geology evidence has indicated that just right beneath the power plant and in the ocean, under the ocean, outside the power plant, have several faults which can cause earthquake. We just really don't see the point of invest so much 10 years and about at least $100 more billion into this kind of poorly conducted construction. I think we have better ways of spending or investing those resources.
I mean, on the topic of carbon kind of emissions, I guess, the United Nations has called nuclear power a low carbon source of electricity that can help to mitigate climate change. I mean, if Taiwan is serious about protecting the planet, shouldn't the government be building more of these power plants rather than closing them down?
Yeah, I mean, technically, nuclear power is a low carbon technology that we agree, because it does not need fossil fuel to operate. But first of all, if you look at the life cycle emission, the scientists until now have different opinion concerning that. Some scholar like Mark Jacobson has indicated that if you look at the whole life cycle, like 100-year life cycle, of the different electricity technologies, you will find out that despite that the emission from nuclear power is significantly lower than coal-fired power plant, but it's still significantly higher than that of renewable energies. If we are going to reduce carbon emission largely, quickly, and starting right now, we just simply cannot count on an energy technology that can only contribute after about 7 or 10 years from now.
Next up, Emma is going to be bringing you a report on an intriguing exhibit about female criminals.
This month, I took a trip to the National Theatre to meet with Zhan Jie, a scriptwriter who hosted an exhibit about a group of people who are usually demonized by society. The women he researched were all female criminals convicted of ghastly murders, but Zhan's perspective shined a different light on their stories. What makes a murderer? Zhan Jie, a resident scriptwriter at the National Theatre, decided to shine a light on the backstory of some of Taiwan's most infamous female criminals. These women were arrested for horrific crimes like stabbing infants and poisoning neighborhood children. The media often portrays their crimes as sensational stories that draw intrigue and horror, but that also dehumanize these women. Zhan believes that the media often leaves out an important question. Who were these women before they were driven to these monstrous acts? Zhan's exhibit displays the real-life stories of 6 female criminals. It features newspaper articles about each case and an audio source with a different side of the story. These audio sources are interviews with people who knew these women on a personal level. The descriptions of these women by their friends and family creates a sharp juxtaposition with the vicious psychopaths described in the corresponding news stories. Behind the crimes were girls who became single mothers in middle school, women who spent their whole lives abused and in poverty, and those who never received an education. Zhan is not trying to justify these women's crimes, but rather offer a better understanding of who they were. Women who, under better circumstances, could have turned out just like anyone else. Next up, Leslie tells us about how maps aren't as cut and dry as they seem. When it comes to portraying Taiwan, there's a whole lot of controversy and drama.
Last week, the United States hosted its 2021 Summit for Democracy. The event's purpose was for democratic renewal and to tackle the greatest threats faced by democracies today. Organizers invited 110 delegations, including Taiwan. This is significant because Taiwan is often left out of high-profile international organizations and meetings because China claims Taiwan as part of its territory. Taiwan's invitation to the US's Democracy Summit is even more groundbreaking considering that China wasn't invited. So the US snubbed China in favor of Taiwan, in the process implying that A, Taiwan is a recognizable democracy, and B, it operates independent of China. Taiwan's representative to the US, Xiaobi Kim, and Digital Minister Audrey Tang attended the event on Taiwan's behalf. In the lead-up to the event, Taiwan's foreign ministry announced that Tang would deliver Taiwan's national statement on December 10th in a pre-recorded video. Come December 10th, and things didn't go too smoothly. At the event, Tang's video presentation was cut short and replaced with an audio-only feed. A Reuters report said that the video feed was cut short because Tang showed a map depicting China and Taiwan in different colors. The report said White House officials requested the summit take down the video because it didn't want the map to cause diplomatic issues, which wouldn't look good if true. However, both the State Department and Taiwan's foreign ministry say that technical issues caused the incident. The foreign ministry pointed out that despite getting cut short at the actual event, Tang's statement is still available in its entirety on the Democracy Summit's website. Now, this isn't the first time a map of Taiwan and China have been a point of contention. Back in 2018, clothing retailer Gap had to recall a t-shirt that had a map of China without Taiwan and the South China Sea. But today, I want to specifically address a meme known as West Taiwan. Now, I'm not talking about the western part of Taiwan's main island. On the internet, there are troves of images depicting Taiwan and China together, with China being labeled as West Taiwan. The West Taiwan meme gained popularity in early 2020, shortly after Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen gave an interview with BBC. In the interview, President Tsai said that Taiwan was already a country and that China had to face that reality. After that interview, West Taiwan memes came and went, But they saw a revival earlier this week when some internet users spotted an ad for a German video game showing China as West Taiwan, save for the Xinjiang area, which was labeled Uyghur. Weirdly enough, the advertisement labeled Mongolia as China, with Mongolia nowhere to be found. Laos was labeled as Georgia, and it's all just very strange. However, before this German video game advertisement, the West Taiwan concept was pushed even further as a meme. There was one meme where an entire world map was relabeled with different iterations of Taiwan. Australia became South Taiwan, Siberia became North Taiwan, Europe became Pizza Taiwan, Africa became Hot Taiwan, and you probably get the idea. I will say though, I don't endorse boiling down an area to a single stereotype and then slapping the word Taiwan on it. After all, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one Taiwan, and that's all the Taiwan I need.
And now, a look at the other stories that are on our radar.
Taiwan and the Central American nation of Nicaragua have cut off diplomatic ties. This is the second time Nicaragua has severed ties with Taiwan in favor of ties with Beijing. In both cases, Daniel Ortega was at the helm as Nicaragua's president. The decision to cut ties with Taiwan comes amid a rift between Nicaragua's government and one of the biggest backers of Taiwan's diplomatic ties, the United States. It also comes as China and the US wrangle for influence in Central America. With Nicaragua's decision to cut ties, Taiwan now has only 14 diplomatic allies. A delegation from France's National Assembly is in Taiwan. This is the second delegation from France's parliament to visit Taiwan in 3 months. During a meeting with the delegation on Thursday, President Tsai Ing-wen said that 2021 has been a year of rapid progress in Franco-Taiwanese ties, with both houses of France's parliament voting to back Taiwan's participation in international organizations. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has praised Taiwan's democracy and said that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be, quote, economic suicide for Beijing. That came during the 2021 Taiwan-US-Japan Trilateral Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue, where Abe delivered the keynote address virtually. Abe also restated his support for Taiwan's entry into the CPTPP trade bloc.
So, Leslie was talking about maps before, and it made me think of this question. So I saw this photo done by an artist called Taiwan Ball earlier, and it had photos of the map of Taiwan, but each one had the country divided up in different ways according to sort of different questions or aspects of Taiwan. And I was kind of curious which of these maps you think might best represent Taiwan.
I actually first saw the international city one because I feel like Taipei's become really international. Like you can get all kinds of food here. All kinds of Chinese food, of course, and then you got Japanese and Thai and Italian and French. I love how international it is. I think the rest of Taiwan is not quite there yet. They're trying to be. And some parts, have even farther to go.
Well, on the topic of food, I chose the map that divided northern Taiwan and southern Taiwan into salty and sweet foods because in southern Taiwan, I guess I've been living in northern Taiwan for too long because, you think salty food is standard, but then you go down south, everything is sweet. They add sugar to everything. I had beef soup down there and I had to turn to my friend and be like, is this a little sweet to you? He's like, you're in Tainan. We add sugar to everything.
Oh, wow.
So that is the most accurate representation of Taiwan, I think, in a map form.
All right, well, I think that I need to stand up for southern Taiwan a bit over here. I used to live in Tainan for 3 years, and I'm most identified with the map that shows southern Taiwan as having the good life or the best life in Taiwan, and northern Taiwan is more about just living to work for money. And I'm not saying that people in Taipei, all they care about is money, but there's definitely, I feel like, more of a pressure to be working really hard, and in the South, I would say more people take their lives a little more relaxed.
You know what? As a guy from northern Taiwan, I completely agree with you.
Are we working you too hard here?
No. I enjoy every second of it.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Taiwan Insider. I am Natalie Tso.
I'm Leslie Liao.
And I'm Emma Benack.
And do subscribe and follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
Yeah, leave a comment or message us if you want to. I'd love to know what you think about the show, and I'd love to know more about who's watching. Anyway, guys, that's all we have for this week. Until next week, see you around.